All right then, boys. Hello, hello, hello.
What's up?
Welcome to Dancing for Architecture, the podcast that you listen to occasionally, probably.
Yes.
Okay, I probably my favorite thing about the link of the day is it has some really cool harmonies and it's super relatable as well. And the melodies are also super pleasing. Overall, I like the production a lot, and it's just a solid track all around. But that's all you get to know about the link of the day. Go click it. Yeah.
Alrighty.
But yes, today we are going to be diving in to a vaporwave album, which is a genre neither of us have really explored a whole lot. I kind of recently I was watching a YouTube video that was just like 50 vaporwave albums to get you into the genre, and I just like picked the first one, and I was just like, oh shoot, this album slaps. And the album we're looking at today is called Baby I Miss You by Tupperwave.
Yeah, so when Ryan was like, oh yeah, the next album we're gonna review is gonna be Vaporwave, I'm like, what? Like, to be honest, when I heard that, I was like, are you good, sir? But like, yo, this star kind of hits, you know? Like, I was surprised. I thought it was just gonna be like, I actually didn't know what it would be, but it was cool. I liked it.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know what vaporwave is or are just generally familiar with it, vaporwave is a genre that where you take samples from late 80s and occasionally like very early 90s pop music, and you heavily distort it and you loop it in weird ways, and you just overall change it so that it kind of has a decayed media feel. And like if you picked up an old cassette that you found that had been run down a little bit, and you just kind of get these vibes, and it's super nostalgic. And yeah, it's a really cool genre because it begs the question a lot of the time of what counts as original art and how much do you need to transform something so that it's completely new and all that good jazz.
Right, yeah.
But yeah,
this album specifically covers the future funk kind of area of vaporwave, because there's the chill wave type, and then there's there's many different types of vaporwave. I mean, to be honest, vaporwave is kind of a state of mind, a philosophy. But I digress. But yeah, I like the style of it. It's usually, like Ryan said, 80s funk or soul samples, heavily side-chained. Side-chaining is just that pumping effect, like the, like where the whole melody will just kind of duck with the kick. That's kind of the effect that most of the songs have. Lots of glitching, filter sweeps, stuff like that. So pretty cool.
Yeah, pretty cool. And you had mentioned the fact that it's future funk, and again, there's so many different subgenres to vaporwave as a whole, and it's just basically based around this idea of creating very nostalgic, decayed media electronic music. And yes, this album is future funk, and it digs heavily into the samples, and boy, do these samples, like, when filtered the way that they are, like, I went back and listened to a good amount of the samples. Like, I was like, looked up what are the samples, and there were like 5 different songs listed. And listening to the original songs, it's crazy to me that when the product was finished, you got something that worked as a coherent album. Because if you just kind of listen to each of the individual songs, like, yeah, they all kind of scream 80s, but outside of that, like, there's not really much holding them together as coherent things. So this is just like really cool as a transformative work. But let's just get into overall, what did you think your favorite track was, Malachi?
So the one that always stands out to me is the very first track, Wasted Time. Like, that one's the catchiest to me. And also Imagine always stands out to me as well. But yeah, those are mine.
Yeah, I would probably say that my favorite track as far as just overall the vibes it gives off is Happy. On my first listen through, I was immediately hooked by Wasted Time. Wasted Time's a really good track. The sample for this one's actually really interesting to me because it's like like the tempo that it's running at, this is probably, I don't know, maybe around 120-ish. I'm bad at estimating tempos, but the original is like a solid like maybe 80 or 90 BPM. So it's like they sped it up so much to get the effects that we got in Wasted Time. But let's just start with that first track. And yeah, like, what did you think was cool about this track? I guess I could go first. I think that what it does really effectively is it opens the album really well, because when you jump into a lot of vaporwave music, I feel like the tracks just kind of start and end, and it feels like you're just getting straight into the vaporwaviness of it. But this one, you have some dialogue going on at the beginning, and then after the dialogue, you have this really cool build up into the main hook of it, and it feels like it's just kicks off the album. It kicks off the album really well.
Yeah, and even the quote that they have at the beginning, you know, starts the aesthetic, but it's also from a 1983 movie called Baby Sister, which don't watch that, kids, but like it keeps the aesthetic of it, and it's a really like cool, wholesome quote. Even the sample, this is the reason this is one of my favorites, is because the original song like slaps on its own. Like that walk down where it's like that part is just like super funky to me.
Yeah, it's just overall just a great track. I love the way that where it just kind of, you feel the track just kind of gravitate towards the kick, like you had described earlier. What did you say that was?
Side chaining,
yeah. And like I was just like, because when you just have good headphones in and you're just listening to that, you just feel just the waves pulsating through your body. It's so great.
Yeah, the pulsing effect. It's in a lot of songs these days too, but nothing like what vaporwave do.
Yeah, no, very true. And it's really kicks off this album's themes very well. And I have a few kind of theories about what the album's about. There's another album that was released a year before this called To Baby with Love, I believe. And this is a follow-up to that. And the basic vibe that I get from this whole album is it's a lover giving a mixtape to their lover who's going off on like a business trip or has to go away on some sort of, I don't know, like going abroad to explore or whatever. And like just kind of these emotions of them being apart. And I really enjoy that vibe that you get where it's like at the beginning, for the first three tracks, it really sets up the story and like kind of gives you this idea of confessed love. And then you get this like song about don't go away. And then you get this kind of sadder song where it's like, oh, we were dancing, but like now you're gone kind of type beat. And so like it really just sets up the overall story of the album very well in these first three tracks. But yeah, let's jump into the next track. I think probably graze through a lot of these and just kind of get to overarching themes and stuff, because a lot of vaporwave, the production is very similar. And for me personally, I am not super well versed in this style of music, so there's only so much analysis I can do.
Right. Yeah, but Don't Break My Heart, I think that's the next one, right? Yeah, so it samples a 1986 Wrigley's Double Mint gum commercial, which I thought was funny. But yeah, it's just another vibe, to be honest. The don't break my heart, don't do it, girl. You know, should have done it another way. Yeah, a lot of them are just like vibes. I think near the latter half of the album, I kind of just like check out because I actually listen to this while playing chess, so it's really good background music for me.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, definitely. There's a lot more energy in the front half of the album than in the back half of the album. And again, this kind of goes with this. How I kind of mapped it out, it feels like the first like I'd say 7 or 8 tracks are very narrative driven, and then like the back half is just more of like a mixtape,
right?
Where it's just like, okay, I'm just pulling together a bunch of tracks that I like from the 80s, and you just so happen to find this like 40 years later, you know, and it's like all decayed, but it's super sick. And then we get to We Were Dancing. This one's also just kind of a vibe. I really like how it introduces this idea of not really, I don't want to say standard song structure, but going from the traditional pop structure to more instrumental bass, just kind of vibes, dancey type music. And I like the way that it just kind of almost masks the vocals a little bit and just kind of buries them a little bit, showing that it's not really, the vocals aren't necessarily really the point of this album, because with the first two, the vocals are front and center. But then with this track, it's a little bit more muted. And I love the way that it shifts to the rest of the album, where the production and the instrumentals are a lot more important.
Yeah, and I think the Japanese gives it, just extends the vaporwave vibe, just like the 80s city pop type thing. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And then we get to, this is on my most recent listen through the album. This is a track that stuck out to me a lot more. Paradise Ocean Club. It starts off with this, it's the first track on the album to introduce this sort of almost underwater feeling kind of like thing, where it's like either you're like outside of where a club is and you can just kind of hear the music pulsing from inside, or you're underwater and there's music playing above water and you can just kind of hear it, but it's just like kind of muffled. I really love that production choice there. I don't know if you know the specific name for that effect, but I really love what it adds to this, because it kind of gives this idea of this sort of outdoor beach party, and it goes really well with the name Paradise Ocean Club. And it's just, I don't know. I just love this track. This track is really cool.
The vocals are also really good in the back too. It's like she just goes up and up. But that effect at the beginning that makes it sound like, oh, it's in another room or underwater, is like kind of a cutoff. So it's, if you in EQ, there's a spectrum range, and so they'll just cut off all of the highs, so you just get that low, the boo, because like if you're in another room, you're only going to hear the lows. So so they just EQ all the highs out, and then they slowly bring all the highs in, and that's what you hear, like that, like it's opening up, brightening up. So that's in most of the songs, actually, just that filter sweep.
Yeah, I love it. I love the way that it's just introduced like 3 tracks in, and then it just aggressively continues for the next couple, where it's like, I feel like this track, Paradise Ocean Club, Gatsby Girl, and Got the Lovin', all very much give off that aquatic beach party type vibe. And Gatsby Girl is another one that kind of stuck with me a little bit on my first listen through. And I really like the bit in the middle where the lady's just like, "Hello, beautiful people. You are listening to Tupperwave."
You are listening to Tupperwave. Yeah.
So wholesome. I love it. It's so great.
I think Gatsby Girl is like that. It's one of the highest energy on the album, like the pulsing, just dance music, Yeah.
Yeah. And listening to the original sample for this is really cool, because how it just really digs into that dance beat for this track. It doesn't do that as much on the original, if I recall correctly. And it's just, it really accentuates that kind of type beat or whatever. And it's just such a fun track. And then I feel like these 3 tracks specifically flow really well together. And then you got the Lovin'. And the thing I really like about Got the Lovin' is how it takes like half the song to get to the main hook of it. And it's because it's got this kind of build up for the beginning, and then halfway through you get the main vocal hook. And I don't know, I just like this one. This one's just kind of a fun
this
track.
Was the one with the sax, the dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. Yeah, I like that one.
Yeah.
And then and this is kind of one of the songs that have the soul samples on them, because like it'll alternate between 80s pop and then soul and then funk. So this is one of the soul ones. And onto Pursuit. This is actually one of the ones that wasn't that interesting to me. One of the ones I checked out.
I felt the same way about that. I was just like, this is just kind of when I imagine vaporwave, I'm just like, this is vaporwave. Like, it's just kind of, I don't know. Like there were some really cool ideas in here. Like, I really like the way that it built to like the horn string or whatever, like halfway through, but I just didn't feel like there was enough going on melodically here. I think this is probably the weakest track on the album, but it's fine. Like, I don't really have any qualms with it existing, but it's just
It
kind
of
of
gave me Geometry Dash vibes. I don't know why.
I kind of see that. Like it's just kind of got that kind of like pulsating like sort of overall just kind of blaring like single note melodic lines going on where it's just not super melodically interesting. So like if you were playing a level over and over again, it's just kind of like, yeah, I wouldn't mind listening to this over and over again for a level. Like it doesn't have a lot of emotional depth to it. So I kind of agree with you there, which just I just kind of checked out for this one. But then we get to Noah Does It Better, and I love this track.
Yeah. This is the one with this is, I have in my notes, this is another one of the really catchy ones.
Yeah. Noah does it half as good.
Yeah, I really like the sample. I couldn't find it. Some of these I just couldn't find the sample for. So I couldn't find the sample for this, but I really like it. The sax, like, you know.
Oh, I love that. Like the moment, like when I first heard this album and I heard the saxophone solo, I just kind of lost my mind. I was just like, oh shoot, this just kind of goes hard. I was just like, yo, this saxophone solo is so sick. And I wasn't sure how much of it was sampled and how much of it was played for just like the whole album, which is why it was really interesting to go back and look at the samples afterwards and seeing like how much is just transformative and more remix based and like composition based. But yeah, no, this track is great. I love it. Like the saxophone solo is super good. Like I like how, again, you have the vocals being more muted and you can still hear them very clearly, but it's just more in the background. And then when it gets to the saxophone solo, the saxophone's just
and the solo was like really good. It wasn't just like, he's like, like he was going in, like the approach notes, the arpet, like he went full jazzy on it, you know.
Yeah, it's just this is one of those tracks that it just makes me so happy. And this is very deep into the part of the album that I like to refer to as the mixtape part. I feel like it starts around Got the Lovin', and you get these next few tracks that are just super aggressively like, yeah, this is just kind of solid vaporwave. Like I'm giving you a list of songs that I really like or like a playlist. And I just feel like I'm just kind of jamming to someone's playlist for the next few tracks, and it's just kind of cool. And then we get into Imagine. You said this was one of your favorite,
right? This thing is like funky as heck, bro. It's so in the pocket. It's like, like, yeah, I really liked it.
Yeah. The original song, I gave it a listen. It gave me major Earth, Wind, and Fire vibes.
Oh, yeah, the sunrise thing. Yeah, that thing was, it was one of the soul samples. I really liked it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My favorite part of this track is how it just kind of does this really cool bass build in the beginning, where at the beginning you don't have much bass, and then the bass just kind of fills your headphones, and then it just drops into the oh my gosh. Yeah. And then we get into the next track, Loving You. This has more
another
saxophone.
Will Downing sample. He seemed to be like really in his bag with Will Downing music. I don't know.
Yeah. I that was one of the few samples that I found, like, for when I was searching for samples, I think I went to the Who Sampled site or something like that. And this album, they had like 5, and this is one of them. And this was, I think it's really interesting. I was like, saw it and I was like, oh, it was released in 91. And I just kind of find that interesting. It's just like early 90s, still very 80s feeling, but
it's weird.
Yeah, this track
like the samples are getting later and later. We start in like 1983 with the first, and then like now we're in early 90s. So I wonder if it continues that theme through the end.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting. I didn't really think about that a whole lot because I didn't really write down the years. I just kind of remembered for that one. And yeah, but that's really fascinating that the years just kind of get later and later as it goes through the album. But then we get into She's Got Everything. And this one has like a really cool key solo in the middle of it, or at the beginning. I don't quite remember, but I just remember there being a really cool like keyboard solo, just kind of vibing. This is again very heavy into the mixtape part where it's just kind of vibing with it, you know, like this is just a fun track. You just kind of vibe with it.
Oh, it's the she's got everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah, she wants. Yeah, that one.
that was a vibe. See, a lot of these are just like, yeah, that was a vibe, you know? I'm not gonna be like, if someone's like, put me on, I'm not gonna be like, yo, listen to this She's Got Everything by Tupperwave, you know? But like, you know, it's, if I'm just like chilling, you know, she's got everything.
Yeah, that's most of this album for me, where I'm just like, yeah, this is just kind of a vibe. Like, I would just kind of put this on in the background for most of my life, and it just kind of works. And then we get to Distance. Distance is another one that's just kind of like, yeah, it's a vibe. I don't have a whole lot to say about it.
I actually didn't have any notes for this except for the sample, but yeah, another just solid chess music.
Chess music. That's what we're gonna call this episode, is chess music.
With the spaced out letters.
Chess music. So great. Oh, and then we get into the last 3 tracks. Oh man, I love the last 3 tracks. Like, I don't know if you were just kind of mentally checked out at this point on this album, but for me, the first 3 tracks of the album and the last 3 tracks of the album are what make this album so good.
The last 3 just are in stark contrast to the first 3. The last 3 are kind of dying down a little. Like, we'll get to the last track, but you know, we got this happy, dun, 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 which is opposed to the beginning, which is like, you know, and then the Valse is just like super, it's like dying down, and then the last day is just like mellowed out. But yeah,
it's really, really cool because, like, let me pull up my notes for the whole album as a whole, because I have notes for the individual tracks and I have notes for the album as a whole. Yeah, everything. So tracks 12 and 13, which is Happy and Distance. Those 2 I feel like are really just, again, pushing forward the narrative of the album, where Distance is kind of a vibely track. What I do remember about it is this idea of like, no, I wish that we weren't this as far apart. And like, I want you to just kind of stick around, you know? And like, you get to Happy, where it's just like, yeah, like, having you around makes me happy. And I feel like these are just kind of the liner notes of the mixtape. Like, I picture a cassette where you just open it up and you see this little piece of paper that has just like a paragraph or so of stuff written on it in cursive. And you get this picture where it's like, yeah, baby, I miss you. I wish you were closer. I wish you would stick with me. And just being with you makes me happy. And you just kind of get those 2 notes, those just 2 kind of like very almost melancholy notes, considering the production with those 2. And I just think it's a really good pair of tracks overall to just kind of really just kind of close out the, I don't want to say message of the album, where it's just like, yeah, like, I miss you. I wish you were around. It makes me happy when you're around. And I just think it's really cool, like, tracing this sort of love story throughout the album. And it's a very good way to close it out, because these are the last 2 tracks that have any lyrics on them.
Yeah. I mean, just this group of the last 3, we got the happy, the dun, 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 and then we got the Valse, which I put as like game menu music, which had an insane guitar solo. Like, oh my
the guitar solo
I was
on
like,
that.
bro, this has no right to have like a full-on rock guitar solo on here.
Yeah. Before we move on to that track, because that one's one of my favorites, I just gotta say that Happy is the track that just kind of get, like, whenever I listen to this album, I'm just singing Happy for the next 4 hours.
So,
like, I'm just like, you just,
yeah,
it's good. Like, it just kind of fills me with the warm fuzzies inside, where I'm just like, happy.
Yeah, another soul sample. Yeah, it's just like, I don't know if it's like I'm trying to think of a movie it would be a soundtrack to, but it's like the guy, he's like walking down the street, dun, dun, it's sunny day. But yeah, it's a vibe.
Yeah, and then getting into Valse. So you had said video game menu music. I honestly got end credit vibes from this track. And the solos. Let's just talk about the solos on this thing, because the solos on like so overall, the things I really noticed about this is you have this main theme. Da 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 da. And what I think is really cool about the solos is the way that it kind of messes around with that theme. And you start with it being just the keyboard playing that theme and the guitar playing that theme, and then they start branching out and going all over the place, but then it just kind of reins back into that theme, and they're just kind of swapping solos, and you just get all of this overall good vibes and really well constructed pair of solos where you have this keyboard which is just cool and soft and just kind of smooth to the touch. And then you get this guitar
nasty,
solo.
Bro.
And I don't know if you want to talk about that.
I don't know who's playing or literally anything about this or the sample, but it's insane. He does he just you know.
Cool. If there's any track from this album that I'm telling you to go listen to, it's this one, because it just gives off the best vibes ever. And I personally think that this is the certified Thicc groove of the album, unless you have another one that you would like to say. I don't know. I think it might be this one, but I think this is the certified Thicc groove.
I'm not gonna lie. With that solo, yeah. This is definitely the certified Thicc groove.
Certified Thicc. And yeah, and then we get to The Last Day, which, oh man, this track just I love listening to this album front to back and then just sitting in silence for 2 minutes after this track.
Right.
Because, oh man, I like how they open it up with dialogue again, signifying that it's closing. And then I love how long it takes to get to the melodic idea, where it's just I picture it being a walk home in the rain. And the first 2 minutes is you walking to your car, and then you get in the car, and then you get the melodic ideas, which only stick around for a little bit. And I love how it just kind of leaves this really bittersweet note on your tongue. And it's just so good. I love this track. When I said the last 3 tracks of this make it, I think the last 3 tracks are just my favorite tracks, because you get this track and it's just, the trumpet is so nice. Yeah, man, I could just kind of gush out about this track all day.
It's so floaty too, man. And it kind of caught me off guard, because I was like, wait, am I still listening to this pumping future funk album I was just listening to? Because this is some smooth jazz, Elevator. I have this as end credits on my notes, but it's crazy. Yeah. And then at the beginning, the quotes, I don't know about you, but they add just this leaning in effect. He's like, oh, daddy, I have to talk to you. Yeah. Be there in about 20 minutes. I'm like, yo, what's happening? What?
Yeah. I definitely like the vibe that we get from this, of this just being the final track on the mixtape, where it's just you're just dang, throughout this whole album, you're just you're remembering your lover being close to you. And then as this track plays and fades away, you just kind of oh yeah, I miss them and they're not here. And it ties back into the whole theme of the album, Baby, I Miss You. And it's just so good. So good. This album is way more thematically tied together than it has any right to be. Just taking samples and repurposing all of these different tracks, where it's they all sound completely different if you just listen to the original samples. And then it ties together into this beautiful story where you're just at the beginning, you're okay, we met, we had to leave, remembering times we had together, just kind of general tracks that you both loved. And then the notes at the end, and then just kind of this sad sort of goodbye, but not in the sense of you're saying goodbye to them, but saying goodbye to the feeling that you're living in for that moment. It's
right.
Just,
and it ends with so the static good. Too. So it's kind of just whoa, it's over. Yeah. And I got this weird urge after finishing the album to go and make a future funk song or a vaporwave song. like just for fun. Like you find a 80s city pop sample or like some sort of sample and just like mess around.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like this is definitely like I've not listened to much vaporwave as a whole, but this album, man, like this is like, oh shoot, this makes me like whenever I finish this album, I'm just like, I can't go back and listen to like regular old pop music or regular old rock. I just need more of it. And I think this does a really great job of it did a great job for me of introducing me to the genre and really making me want to dig deeper into it, where it's like I love so much of what I heard on this album. And from what I saw of just like looking around the internet, apparently this is like up there as like a very well received vaporwave album, and like it's really freaking good apparently. And like I'm like, dang, like this genre has so much more to offer, and I'm just so excited to dig more
I'm interested
in
how people will manipulate samples, because like I feel like we got a little taste of it here, but like I don't know, I feel like someone could go crazy with just like chopping it up, pitching it, and doing crazy stuff with it.
Yeah. But overall, I think that this album is really solid. I feel like I wasn't personally able to do it a whole lot of justice because I'm not super familiar with the genre. But from what I heard, I really like it.
I literally knew nothing about vaporwave except for montage videos and yes, by a certain somebody.
Yes. But yeah, thank you guys so much for listening. This episode, it was a little shorter, but it was pretty good length, I'd say. It was a bit of a shorter album as well, and just a lot of overall good vibes. But yeah, be sure to smash that like button. Leave recommendations of what you want to hear below. We only have one more album queued up as we're recording this. We only have one album in mind that we want to record. So we're definitely taking recommendations. Send them over. Anything else you want to add? The Instagram. Go follow the Instagram at D4A Podcast. Links will be in the description for the socials for this podcast. And that's
and if you want to see us do anything, like talk about anything different, or like, oh, maybe you want to see us, I don't know, write something, like we're down. This is a baby podcast, so if you got any ideas you want to see us do, then let us know. Yeah. But overall, thank you for listening, and we will catch you in the next one. Music.